Happy Friday and happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, the Conscious Codependence Coach and the founder of the Conscious Codependence Collective. Today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is codependence and dating strangers. And this is for anybody, anywhere where you find yourself in the dating spectrum. Either you're not dating, you're dating, you're in a short-term relationship, you're in a long-term partnership marriage, anywhere where you're at on the spectrum. Hopefully this will serve and support you. And also I'm going to be giving you information on our next free Conscious Codependence class. It's free for anybody in the community that wants to come, and that is this Monday. And we'll be covering my first tenet of codependence. All three are the want to be wanted, the need to be needed, and the need to prove oneself. And this Monday we'll be going over the want to be wanted, which is my first tenet of conscious codependence. All right, so that's it for an opener. Please like or subscribe to my channel. Please keep the comments coming. I read them. I deeply appreciate them. I take them in. And all right, here we go. It is so important and incredibly difficult, I think, for a lot of us to, when we first meet somebody, to have them be a totally clean slate of a human. It's so, also known as a stranger, right? Like a total stranger. It's really hard, once we add on the romance context or the potential intimacy context or the dating context. If you notice when you meet somebody that's not in a dating context, your insecurities are not, for the most part, well, that's not true for a lot of us codependents. We tend to put our insecurities on most people. But a lot more once we add a dating context. It's heightened our safety mechanisms. What are we going to hide from them? What are we going to expose to them? What are they going to see? What are they not going to see? Our spidey sense for, am I safe with this person? What did they mean when they said that? And when we look at my codependent listening filters, which we cover in my 8-week Listen for a Living program, our filters are heightened. We're listening through filters of wanting to relate, or wanting to validate, or wanting to agree, or taking things personally. Our filters can often be heightened. So it's easy to throw a lot into the space when we first meet somebody. And here's the thing, I think that it's really important to see somebody as a stranger when you first meet them, even if it's a date. To do your best to be curious about them and not have them be somebody that has to check certain boxes when you first meet them. They're complete strangers, and it's most important and hard to do because as you move along in a relationship, and for those people who are in partnerships and in marriages, it becomes harder and harder and harder to see somebody as a stranger. If you've been with somebody for a year or 5 years or 10 years or maybe even 6 months, it becomes harder and harder to not know them. Like, oh, this is somebody I'm still getting to know after 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. It becomes harder and harder to generate curiosity because our trauma filters are heightened. And there's so much of life that you're sharing and so much of life that both people are trying to come to some even ground frequency in. And then there's if it began in a heightened state, like if the dating part began in a heightened state, and then that goes away, and then there's a wishing that beginning part came back again. And some people will have that wish for 10 years or 20 years. Oh, but it was so good at the beginning. We're waiting for that to kind of come back. And I often say this to my clients, and I'm not a dating coach, but because I focus on trauma healing and codependence, my work has a lot to do with relationship. So I often say that dating is the hardest practice of being present. Like, should we take it on as a practice of being present, which is, I think, important that we do? It's really hard because every conversation is a future trip. Possibly even every text is a future trip. Every kiss or every sensual or sexual move or every conversation, or even for some of us codependents, it goes down to every line of dialogue is a future trip. Like we'll go on one date and think in the future about, what this person wants and how our life is going to go, and do we want the same things in a year from now or 10 years from now, or everything puts everything in the future. And then that actually heightens when you're deeper into a relationship, and for people who have been married or some sort of domestic partnership, even going through divorce, and actually save those thoughts, the divorce thoughts. But as we get deeper into relationship, the future tripping continues. Well, if we have this problem, how are we going to, sustain our relationship for another 5 years if we have this problem? Or if I feel like this in the relationship, or a certain level of safety has been broken, or somebody breaks their word, well, great, well, how are we going to deal with this in a year or 10 years, right? Or I have to stay with this person because I'm married to them for X amount of years, but they did this thing. And so a lot of things go into the future. And if we take relationships, long-term relationships, short-term relationships, even one date, if we take it as a healing contract, because anytime romance is involved, healing is possible. Healing is possible in any kind of relationship. But when we look at how our trauma gets heightened and our codependence gets heightened, our insecurities get heightened, what we think we need and want from another person gets heightened, our traumatic identity and the way in which we operate in order to sustain relating and validation in relationships, all of that gets heightened when romance is in the context. So if you're in a relationship and if you're not already in the agreement or in the understanding that a relationship is a healing contract, it's meant for all of your stuff to come up, all of your unhealed stuff to be triggered. I suggest that if you haven't already added that to the agreement in your partnership, that you add it. This is a healing contract. All of our unhealed stuff is going to come into the container of this relationship, maybe not 100% of the time. But when it happens, it's important to note, this is because we are in a relationship and it simulates our holding environment. It simulates our initial intimacy, safety, and socializing training when we were children in the house that we grew up in. It will simulate all of that, and the roles that we were trained to play in that household will start to play them again. All these younger identities will get triggered. So if you're in a relationship and you haven't already agreed that this is a healing contract, I suggest having that conversation. If you're dating and you go on one date with somebody, when you go on that one date, consider thinking to yourself, this is a healing contract with myself. I'm going to go on one date with this person, and maybe something for myself can get healed, something that comes up, a block in communication, or some way that I'm hiding myself, or some way I'm projecting onto them, or something that I think I need from them. That you can go home after the date and go, what can I heal? What can I realize or learn from that date for myself? And then when you are going into a relationship, creating relationship with somebody, have that agreement of this is a healing contract kind of a thing. And I mentioned that I was going to sort of come back to divorce. Maybe I can do like a whole nother video on divorce. I've never personally been through a divorce, but at some point I had 7 clients all going through divorce at the same time. So I learned a lot about divorce and supporting people through divorce, also a lot of legal stuff that I had known before. A divorce can be a ginormously huge healing contract. Whether you have that with the person you're divorcing, some people don't have that level of communication once they start going through a divorce. Going through a divorce is a huge healing contract with oneself. Yet again, you're back to having a healing contract with yourself. Of course, when you have a healing contract with another person, you're also in a healing contract with yourself. So if you're with somebody, you're like, I'm going to be with this person, but they don't understand the healing world, they don't understand the healing language. Okay, well, then have that healing contract with yourself. And stay present from the moment, from in any date that you're in, if you're in a long-term relationship, if you're not dating at all, there's people that trigger sort of your interest or curiosity. Every single moment when there's some flirting situation or where there's an actual relationship, it's all a healing contract. It's all a moment to notice, what is it that I'm stumbling over in my identity with this person because there's some sort of romantic interest in the air? What am I stumbling over in my identity if I'm breaking up with somebody? Because then the relationship is now changing and transforming into something else. You're breaking up, you're getting divorced, you're starting over again, you're dating, you're noticing that you want to get rid of somebody, but you can't quite get rid of them. Wherever you're at in the dating journey, what is it about your identity that this relationship or this person or this thing that you have with this person is making you trip over? Is because you think that they're supposed to supply something for you. They're supposed to get you, they're supposed to understand you in some way. Most importantly, and I say this about people who want to heal their relationships with their parents, it's the same thing in intimate relationships, which is at some point, it's no longer important for your parent to understand you. You know, when you move through life and you're like, I just want my parent to understand me, I want my parent to get me, I want them to know me, I want them to understand my point of view. Well, the most important part of maturation, I think, is when we turn the camera and we go, actually, I no longer need my parent to get me or understand me. It is now my job to get and understand them. Because it's a regressive desire to want them to understand you, because when you were a child, you may have needed them to see you and understand you and validate your existence because you needed their attention for your safety. But we no longer need that as adults. We just no longer need their attention for our safety and for our identity and for us to fully be embodied in our existence. And so when it comes to intimate relationship, if there's any moment where we want our partner to get us or see us or understand us, most importantly, are you getting them, seeing them, and understanding them? Is there a moment where they become known to you, like, oh, I know them. I know what they're thinking. I know what they want from me. Lean into maybe they're a stranger, even if you've been with them for 25 years. Clean slate them. Become curious. Clean slate yourself. Become curious about yourself, about what is triggering you, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, about what you're interpreting about the other person. That relationship is, no matter where you're at in a relationship, it's the number one most important and difficult and challenging practice of being present and noticing any and all level of future tripping. All right. Thanks for listening to my thoughts, theories, and rants. The link for our free Conscious Codependence Conscious Codependence class for anybody in the community. The Zoom link is down below. You register in the Zoom link, you just come join the class. For my first tenet of Codependence, we'll be covering the want to be wanted, and there's always time for Q&A and coaching. Happy Friday. Have an amazing weekend. Happy healing, and life is now.